God is saying to you today, good morning, hey Zacchaeus. What you're doing up that tree, Zacchaeus, was the kind of man who worked hard to get what he wanted. And one day he decided he really wanted to see Jesus. He knew Jesus was coming along the street, so he climbed a sycamore tree to get a better view. Perhaps all Zacchaeus wanted to do was have a look at Jesus. Perhaps Zacchaeus thought Jesus was much too important to talk to him. Perhaps he was just curious. But one thing was certain. That tree sure came in handy because Zacchaeus was short. When Jesus came up to the tree, he stopped and looked straight at the man hiding in the branches. "Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must come to your house." 5 Zacchaeus hurried down and joyfully took Jesus home. Zacchaeus said to the Lord, "I am giving half of everything I own to the poor, and I will pay back anyone I've cheated 4 times as much." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to your home." Parable of the talents. Jesus explains many things through stories that we call parables because they teach us something important about how to be good and to do good. In his parable about the talents, Jesus tells the story of a wealthy man and his servants. Here it is. One fine day, a kind, rich man calls his servants to meet with him. He has a surprise for them. When they gather together, he gives each one a special gift called a talent. In Bible, Jesus' disciples want to know who is the best, who is the greatest, who is first in the kingdom of heaven. He answers them by calling a little child, pure and innocent, to come be with them. And he tells them that they must be like children, humble, to experience the kingdom of heaven. The parable of the sower explains the reception of the word of God in different audiences. Not all who hear listen, not all who listen follow. The day came to celebrate the Passover feast. Jesus sent out 2 of his disciples. He told them, "Go into the city. A man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him. He will show you a large upstairs room. Prepare for us to eat there." The fruit of the Spirit is found in the book of Galatians in the Bible. A disciple named Paul wrote it. The Lord wants you to have the fruit of the Spirit. Do you? You are supposed to have love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. If you live for Christ, then you should show these fruits in your life, just like a tree that is planted outside. If it is an apple tree, and it does not make any apples, then it's not good for anything. The purpose for it was to make apples. You have to have fruit in your life so you can be used to make a difference in people's lives and help save souls. People are watching your life. If you say you're a Christian and serve the Lord, then you should have lots of fruit showing. You should have love, joy, peace, etc. Jesus will help you with you having the fruit of the Spirit if you just ask. He wants you to bear all of these fruits for him. Help him out and show love towards others. Show Jesus to them through your actions and the way you act. Obedience is important. In one of his parables, Jesus talks about a father and his 2 sons. The older son is asked, "Will you help with the grapes in our vineyard today?" This son replies, "No, I will not go and work for you today. I have better things to do." But later he realizes, that was not the right thing to say to my father. I need to be obedient. And he, Joseph, had 11 brothers, but his father loved Joseph best. One time he gave Joseph a beautiful, colorful coat. Joseph's brothers were angry that their father had given him the coat and loved him the most. They decided they would do a very bad thing. They grabbed Joseph and sold him to some people as a slave. A slave is someone who is owned by another person. Joseph's brothers did another bad thing. They took Joseph's coat to their father and said, "Joseph is dead!" Their father was very, very sad, but Joseph was not dead. He had been taken to Egypt and sold to a man named Potiphar. Potiphar liked Joseph because he always worked his best and was honest. God blessed Potiphar because Joseph lived in his house. Potiphar had a wife, and she was not a good woman. She wanted Joseph to do something wrong. Joseph said, "No," and ran away. Potiphar's wife was angry and told Potiphar that Joseph was a bad man. Potiphar believed his wife's lies and sent Joseph to prison. A prison is a place where someone is locked up for doing something wrong. Joseph was there even though he hadn't done anything wrong. Joseph worked in the prison, and soon his boss liked him and made him a helper. One day, Joseph met two men who had dreamed the night before. They said, "We don't know what these strange dreams mean." Joseph said, "I will tell you." Both men listened to Joseph. Everything happened just like Joseph said it would. One of the men told Joseph that he would remember Joseph had helped him and help him become free. But he didn't remember. Joseph stayed in prison. 2 more years passed. That is a long time, but God had a plan. The story of Jacob, Isaac, and Rebekah had 2 sons, Esau and Jacob. They were twins. Even before they were born, their mom could feel the 2 babies wrestling around. When the twins were born, Esau came out first, but Jacob followed with his little hand wrapped tightly around his brother's foot. As they grew up, the twins were very different. Esau loved to be outdoors and to hunt. Jacob liked to be indoors. Esau liked spending time with his dad, and Jacob liked spending time with his mom. When Isaac was old, he wanted to make Esau the boss. But Jacob wanted to be the boss, so he came up with a plan. First, he tricked his brother there into swapping his blessing for a bowl of soup. Soon after, Jacob and his mom played another trick. Jacob pretended to be Esau so that their dad would give Jacob the blessing he needed to be in charge. Esau was extremely upset that Jacob had tricked them. Their mom was worried and told their dad Edo send Jacob away to a different town to be safe. Character stories. Self-control is keeping your emotions check. It's balancing your wants and your needs. It's being mature. There show self-control many ways to Jackie had a temper. Little things made her angry. She tried really hard to control it. Her teacher showed her how to count to 10 before saying something when she got angry. It saved her from saying a lot of unkind things that she really didn't mean. Jackie was learning self-control. Henry loved to eat sweet stuff. His ma'am didn't let him have too much, though. He only got to eat cookies and cake on rare occasions. So when he got some, he ate it slowly. He saved some for the next day and the next. He didn't want to eat it all at once, or it'd be gone. Henry had self-control. After 100 years had passed since Imogen's family came to Egypt. That a long time. Many children were born, grew up, and had children of their own. They were called the children of Israel. Do you remember how Lisef helped the Farsh of Egypt so that the people wouldn't go hungry? After he died, other pharaohs ruled over Egypt. They didn't remember Losef or how he had helped them. One of the pharaohs had a bad idea. He said, "There are too many Tirelites. We should make them slaves." But Israel only grew bigger. The pharaoh heard all the baby boys of Israel. Many mothers very sad that the pharaoh would hurt their babies. One mother's name was Jochebed. They gave birth to a son. For 3 months, she big her baby. She loved his very much, but she couldn't hide him forever. Jochebed thought of how she could protect her son from the bad pharaoh and his men. She took a basket, and she casted it with tar to make it able to float. She put her baby in the basket. Then she went to the Biver. There were reeds at the edge of the water. Reeds are like a tall grass that grows in water. Jochebed hid the basket in the need story of Deborah. Deborah knew God. She knew that God is always with us and is always guiding us. Deborah listened to God and he directed her actions. She was called a prophet, someone who speaks for God. While Deborah prophesied, she spent most of her time judging Israel. All Israel came to her for guidance. In the entire book of Judges, she is the only judge who acted in a legal capacity. Deborah would daily sit outside the town, under the palm of Deborah, available to everyone. Type Amen and share. Once upon a time in a forest, there lived a busy little ant named Andy. He was always doing something, running here and there and never taking any breaks. One day, a carefree grasshopper named Greg came by and saw Andy and his hard work. "Why do you work so hard, Andy? You should relax and have some fun like Met," said Greg. Andy replied, "I have to save up for the winter so I can survive through the cold months." "Oh, you can worry about that later. Enjoy life now," Greg said and hopped away. The season changed and winter arrived. Andy had plenty of food and a warm home, but poor Greg was shivering and starving in the cold with nothing to eat. Andy felt sorry for Greg and offered to share his food and shelter. Grateful for the kindness, Greg learned his lesson and promised to be more responsible in the future. The moral of the story is that hard work and planning ahead is essential to succeed in life. Don't let fun distract you from important tasks, or you may regret it later. Show his love. Jacob gave Joseph a colorful coat. Jacob's other sons were jealous, so they sold Joseph to merchant. We took Joseph to Egypt to become a slave. Egypt's ruler was called Pharaoh. Pharaoh had a disturbing dream one night and wanted to know its meaning. He asked all his wise Ms to interpret the dream, but none of them were able to do Safuyi. Joseph helped Pharaoh by telling home what his dream meant. Pharaoh was so happy that he freed Joseph from and put Joseph in charge of all Egypt. Years later, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt to beg for food. They did agonize Joseph. Joseph tested his brothers and found that they had become honest men. "You are my family," Joseph said as he hugged them. "I love you and forgive you. What did you learn?" Ask them these questions about the story. What did Jacob give Joseph? What did Joseph's brothers do to Joseph? Did Joseph forgive his brothers again? I should have kept my mouth shut, but if I had, things might not have played out the same way. Here is how they did play out, and how I landed in a deep, slippery pit. My brothers were keeping the flocks over in Dothan. My father sent me to give them a message. Seriously, I think he just wanted me to check up on them and make sure they were working. So, I traveled out to find them. When I did find them, they almost murdered me, literally. Thank God for Reuben, my oldest brother. He convinced the others not kill me, so they just roughed me up a little bit, threw me into this deep pit. Can you imagine what Joseph's coat looked like? The Hebrew language says, Ketanel Pasim, which means tur tunic of distinction, or long robe with sleeves. Some experts say that it differed from the coats of Joseph's brothers because it had long sleeves, whereas the brothers wore the typical working man sleeveless tunic, just as managers today wear suits. Perhaps Joseph was set apart by his long-sleeved coat? We know that the coat his father Jacob gave him showed Jacob's great love for Joseph above his other sons. It was a symbol of power over his brothers. Jacob's love for Joseph was no secret, but Joseph's brothers hated his coat and what it symbolized. When they met Joseph at Shechem, the first thing I did was to strip his coat from him. Jesus told a story. He said, "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Won't he leave the 99 in the open country? Won't he go and look for the one lost sheep until he finds it? When he finds it, he will joyfully put it on his shoulders and go home. Then he will call his friends and neighbors. He will say, 'Be joyful with me. I have found my lost sheep.' I tell you, it will be the same in heaven." H. There will be great joy when one sinner turns away from sin. Yes, there will be more joy than for 99 godly people who do not need to turn away from their sins. Joseph forgives. The famine was great in the land. Jacob sent his sons a second time to Egypt to get grain and gain the return of his son Simeon. Jacob was very reluctant to allow Benjamin, Joseph's younger brother, to travel with them. But Joseph had insisted they bring Benjamin, or he would not release Simeon. The first time they were in Egypt, they had met Joseph, but they didn't recognize him. He now looked and dressed like an Egyptian and had an Egyptian name, Zaphnath-Paneah. The brothers never thought their little brother would be second in command in the land. Type yes if you are ready for it. Daniel prayed every day 3 times a day to God. There were some men that did not like Daniel because King Darius was going to put Daniel in charge over them. These bad men looked for a way to get Daniel thrown into the den of lions. They couldn't find any fault in him. They knew he prayed to God, so they used that as a way to have him killed. The men went to the king and had a decree signed that if any man asked something from any god or man in 30 days, that he would be thrown in the den of lions. Daniel got caught by the men and was thrown in the den. The angels shut the lions' mouths, and they didn't eat him. The Lord protected Daniel. Jonah and the whale Jonch was in the belly of a whale for 3 days. This happened because he did not listen to God. What do you think Jonah did when he was in there? Do you think he was scared? Do you think he prayed? What would you do if you were in the belly of a whale? God wanted Jonah to go to Nineveh and tell the people that it would be overthrown in 40 days. The people repented and God changed his mind. Jonah was mad. He knew this was going to happen. He didn't want to go tell the people to change. He went out of the city and sat in shelter. God made a gourd to come up and shade his head. Jonch was happy for the gourd that come up. Then God made a worm to come and eat the gourd. Then Jonah was mad again. He didn't want to live anymore. God asked Jonah why he would have pity on a gourd that he did not work to make grow. It came up in one night and vanished in a night. God said, "Should not I spare Nineveh, that great city where more than 120,000 people?" King David had a son named Solomon. Solomon grew up to be the king after David. One night, God asked Solomon, "What would you like to have, Solomon?" Solomon said, "I just want to be wise." God said, "I will give you a wise heart." Greedy Gehazi. Shame on you, greedy Gehazi. Shame on you. You told a lie, and your greed you tried to hide. Greedy Gehazi. Elisha knew greedy Gehazi. Elisha knew. He knew you told a lie, and you were greedy Todd. So Naaman's leprosy is now on you. Abigail was very wise when she heard her husband say he wouldn't give food to the future king. David, she knew that her house and family wouldn't be safe. Abigail took her donkey and as much food as she could gather and went to persuade David to change his mind and not attack. The young prophets were growing in number, and the land was becoming too crowded for all of them. They decided to ask the prophet Elisha if they could move. One of them said, "Elisha, we've outgrown the land where we live and need more space. Would it be all right if we built some houses near the Jordan River?" Elisha replied, That's an excellent idea. I think I'll join you down by the river." Elisha went with them to watch the clearing of the land. While the prophets were chopping down trees, one of them lost the heavy head of his axe. Abraham was sitting by his tent one very hot day. He looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. He was happy to have visitors. He hurried to them and asked Therm to stay for dinner. God told Abram would have more descendants than the stars in the sky. Abram was to change his name to Abraham, and Sarai had a new name, Sarah. Soon Sarah would have a son called Isaac. God was making a special promise to Abraham called a covenant. It was a promise for all his family, a family that would one day include. The Lord said to Abraham, "Leave your country and your people. Leave your father's family. Go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great." There was a rich man named Job who lived in the land of Uz. He was a good man. He always put God first in his life. One day when God was talking with his angels, Satan dropped in. God asked Satan, "Have you ever seen such a good man as my servant Job?" Satan liked to argue with God and said, "Anyone can be good when he has." But God still let Samson win. It happened when the enemies were having a party in a big house. They took Samson with them to the party. God gave him strength. Samson pushed down the pillars that held up the rule. The roof fell in on top of all the enemies. God had saved his people again. Type 1212. If you believe, share this video. If you love God, subscribe this channel for more blessings.